Long-term research and short-term research, some differences between those two topics. And I would like to, start with my question, which is how much do you see an impact on the outcomes, on the readout of these differences between, how to do some impact on, on your career with papers or anything else, if we consider these two different aspects, doing long-term research or short-term research, which differs a bit, right, between academia and industry. Maybe you can start on this.
So the question is about like long-term and short-term research?
Yeah, and how, which is the impact, right, that we can have in our path. Of course, looking from the perspective academy as a more focused on long-term research, and industry more short-term research for that project and so on, much more focused on fast deadlines and so on, maybe.
Yeah, but I also think in industry they do the same. They also do, like, yes. Big companies, they're also interested in doing long-term research.
Yeah,
even in the previous mentoring session, Rodrigo Merenson mentioned that when they hire someone, they don't hire someone like for now, but they hire it for the next 10 or even 20 years. I think that shows, at least at Google or like all the large AI-based companies are all trying to aim in the long term, like to compete to each other in the long term. And the same is done in academia, but I think the difference is that like industry is more focusing on applied science, while academia is more focused on basic research or basic sciences that later are adopted by companies and by other institutions. But also, yeah, it's difficult to plan this because usually you need to have like short-term deadlines or short-term thinking, like papers, grant applications, and workshops and so on. But also you need to have like also like to see how each paper fits into your overall like research agenda or research scheme, and not everyone is able to do that. Like that's a difference because between, for example, being a PhD student, a postdoc, and a professor, right? Usually with increasing level of experience, you get more like this horizon to plan far ahead. And maybe you're now a PhD student, but then later you will become a postdoc or a researcher in industry, and then as you accumulate, let's say, years of experience, you will be able to plan this horizon. So I think like the most limited horizon is people that have maybe an undergrad degree because they know like very little about the field. I mean, they still study 3 or 4 years or even more, but in comparison to the field, you cannot cover everything in that. And then you do a master's, and then you get a couple of years more of experience, and then you do a PhD, you get from 3 to 5 years of additional research experience, and then you have usually like the best ability to plan ahead. Like you should be able to be aware of all the other fields, how they relate to each other, how they relate to your papers, and so on. But overall, this is like the most difficult part of doing research, and especially of having impact. Like one thing is that maybe you plan to do research in a field, and maybe you don't have any impact, or maybe you have a lot of impact, but that's usually something you cannot really control. It's more stochastic than we would like.
Yeah, definitely. I have to agree with all of your points here. Maybe Hans or Sergio could add more thoughts on it.
I can add something possibly. It's interesting to also consider both the size of the company and the university or what academic institution you are on, because there are big differences. If you are in the industry but in a small, like a startup, there will be a lot more applied and a lot more short-term research just to solve the problems that are the most important. And usually in small startups, they have very few problems that they have to be very good on them, and so you don't have a lot of freedom to do research on whatever topic you want. And in academia as well, You always have a bit more freedom, but you, depending on the topic or the place you are, it's possible that you have a lot less resources in terms of computational resources and in terms of people as well. You have to manage very restricted a team with a small size of people doing lots of things on their own, and that also impacts the type of research that you can do in the academia as well. So we used to think that you have more freedom on academia, but if you, for instance, want to do research on a topic in which you need a lot of computational resources and it's not available for you, then you are actually limited by this. And so, yeah, it must be considered the size and the resources available in all of the situations considering here.
Yeah, definitely. And I would like to add something here is that when I first introduced this question, I mentioned like this long-term research and short-term research. And maybe Sergio could also, share his thoughts here. But how do you think, Sergio, just in addition to the question, this particular thing that we have for normally we have 2 years for a master degree, or 5 years when we attach to a single topic, right? And then you have to stress it. So how much is beneficial or problematic, right? And you lose focus, maybe manageable amount of time, it will be more difficult and so on. So maybe you could.
Yeah, so this is a difficult question for me because I have been very unfocused, let's say, during my academic career in general. So I have a background as an economist, and then I moved into machine learning, and inside machine learning, I have moved around quite a bit. But in the end, I think I have benefited a lot from changing quite a bit and reading, let's say, quite broadly, because then I get ideas from one area of machine learning which are maybe not directly connected to other areas, and that gives me some ideas to kind of maybe solve some problems that are for which the solution is already in there, but maybe someone hasn't made the connection yet. And this has already happened to me a couple of times. I was discussing with someone, let's say from causality, which is the area I work at the moment, and maybe they didn't know that much from Bayesian statistics, and then there is a very straightforward direct solution from Bayesian statistics that you could apply in causality. So I think that reading broadly and kind of jumping and moving around is always beneficial, let's say, for this. Of course, the more you read, the less you will produce, right, in terms of papers and so on. So there is a bit of a trade-off in here, in which, okay, you know a lot about different areas, but then again, you're not sitting down and writing papers. So personally, I think that in the long term, obviously, this is going to bring greater benefits for yourself and so on, but obviously there are incentives into kind of being actionable with the information and the knowledge you have at the moment. I would also like to add something to what Matthias said before, and that is kind of the stochasticity of the impact of research. And I think I agree mostly with what Matthias said in there, but I think one can also reduce the stochasticity of research by, let's say, doing following some steps that can really help improving the impact. And I was thinking, for example, when Matthias was talking, that if, for example, you publish a very nice code for your paper and so on, so that it's easy to reproduce the results that you have, that obviously then your paper will have higher chances of having an impact. And I'm saying this because I had to learn it the hard way. In my first paper, I did horrible code. I was Jupyter notebooks jumping from one cell to the other one, terrible. And of course, that whenever someone wants to come and basically work with that code is basically going to be impossible. So if you publish good code, nice code on GitHub, it's reproducible, make the data accessible and so on, the chances of your research being impactful really increase.
Yeah, great. Yeah, definitely. I couldn't agree more. So yeah, I guess it's a good point here because even though right we don't have, let's say, a great number of published papers, I think the idea is to show right your good work, not your greatest amount of work, right? So I guess it's connected to this idea. So yeah, one thing that I missed to ask you, Sergio, just please take your time to introduce yourself, and the same thing for Professor Hans, because we passed this.
Yeah. So my name is Sergio Garrido. I am, so at the moment I'm an intern in Amazon research. I came back, I was doing a research internship last year. Now I'm doing another one, and I work in the lab in Tübingen in the south of Germany, and I work at the causality lab. And let's say besides this, I am doing a PhD in machine learning applied to transport in Denmark at a university that is called DTU. And basically I use all of the methods that I was saying before, so Bayesian statistics, causality, a little bit of neural networks as well, in order to solve problems in transportation that are usually solved with, let's say, classical statistic methods, or not with the aid of these methods.
Yeah, great. Hans, what do you want to do?
Hi. Yeah, I'm a professor at Federal University of Pernambuco. I do research on machine learning and also biologically inspired methods or models. And in my PhD, I was heavily inspired by cognitive science. I studied language acquisition and how children learn language, and this includes like computer vision and natural language processing, and also a bit of psychology. And yeah, that was the topic. It was too broad in my PhD, but luckily I was able to find a small point in which I could contribute, and then I got a successful PhD. And after that I was focusing more on representation learning and also on reinforcement learning. So when I became a professor at Federal University of Pernambuco, I started running with a few colleague professors a robotics team that competes in robotics competition like RoboCup, and that was what led me to do research on reinforcement learning. And now I'm trying to compose this background on representation learning into reinforcement learning as well. And yeah, basically that's my background now.
Yeah, thank you both for introducing yourself. So I'm wondering here if Lourdes or Paola want to step in and contribute to this conversation here. Maybe follow up with another question.
Okay, thank you so much, Pedro. I'm Lourdes, one of the mentoring co-chairs. I want to ask a question here. To become a good researcher, is it important to study abroad to increase our knowledge? What do you think? Anybody can start? Thank you.
Maybe I have something to say about this, because I've done the opposite, and I think it wasn't very good. And a very good experience, the best experience that I could have, because I've done my master's and PhD at the same department, and this left a little shortened view. So I was looking into certain topics and certain conferences, and I was happy with that. And then I was already a professor at Federal University of Pernambuco when I had a chance to go abroad, and I went to Mila, to one of the top deep learning labs in the world, and that kind of completely shifted my view and increased my perspective about many topics and also about the conference that I should be publishing on. And I've learned about many other researchers that I should be following their research. and that was very, very helpful for me. And I wish I had done this before. If I had done this like in the beginning of my PhD, that would be a lot better, and I would probably have learned lots of things, not just in terms of academic stuff and areas, but also in terms of procedures, how people do things, how do they manage research, what are the steps they take, and have this different view is very inspiring and also helpful for you to see the whole picture. So I think this is really important. So that's my my view on this topic.
Maybe I can combine this with my introduction. So I'm currently a researcher at the German Research Center for Artificial Intelligence in Bremen. And I think I have, well, maybe the most international experience because I did my undergrad in Chile, like a computer engineering degree. And then I did my master's in Germany, and then my PhD in Scotland, which is currently part of the UK. But then, and then I came back to Germany to, like, as a postdoc after finishing my PhD. And in general, I think it's always very positive to get combinations of cultures. Like I travel a lot inside Europe and also to Latin America. And in general, yeah, I'm not sure if it's like a hard requirement to be a good researcher, because there are still good researchers that maybe they studied the whole career, like a bachelor, master's, or PhD in the same university or in the same country. But in general, you need to have some connection to the international research community. That's very, very important. And it's much easier to get this connection if you study, for example, abroad. But it's not a hard requirement. Like, for example, if you do only research in Latin America, you can use the workshops and conferences like this one to get connections to the international research community. So I think the important thing is to have the connections to for example, to participate in large collaborations, or just to have collaborators around the world that can expose you to different ideas. But for that, I mean, as I mentioned, it's easier if you study abroad. But if you don't have that opportunity, because it depends on many factors that you cannot control, then maybe you can try to get these connections through, for example, through the mentoring program in our LatinX community, or through other opportunities, like other conferences. They also have mentoring programs now, or just trying to do networking, like in LinkedIn, via email, via any kind of chat, even Reddit, for example. You can get collaborators. There are also like these research collaborations, like this ML Collective, I think it's called, that are available in Twitter. Or also just try to have a discussion in Twitter. That also helps a lot. But I think like also if you study abroad, you have advantages that people that didn't study abroad, that are not only the connections, but in terms of migration, for example, if you study in another country, you usually get migration benefits that other people don't have. And of course, you get access to the job market as well. At least for example, inside the European Union, it's much easier to work here if you're already present here. Like it's much easier to connect with labs because there are no visa issues. So generally, I would encourage people to try to study abroad, like to expand their knowledge and their zone of comfort. But of course, not everyone can do that. But I think with modern technologies, we can actually try to expand this, like in a way that is not going abroad.
Sergio, do you want to add something?
Not so much. I think I agree very much with what both Hans Clifford and Matthias said. I also had the opportunity to study abroad in different places, and I think I have benefited quite a bit from that. But yeah, I would be repeating basically what they said if I said anything else.
Thank you so much. I agree with you also, yeah, because I studied my master's degree in computer science in Brazil, and I loved the experience. I learned a lot, yeah. And now I can say that I improved my knowledge, and I also would like someday to travel abroad, maybe to Europe, US, to study PhD. Who knows? Thank you so much. And now, Paola, please go ahead.
Yeah, I want maybe to jump back to the previous topic. I have a very straightforward question, I guess. So you, like, if you're doing research and you're still like in academia, maybe not have not jumped to a big lab like a company or what, like this type of more applied science research. And now the area of computer vision is very crowded. It's quite difficult to get to have like a very impact there, right? So I am wondering what have you learned so far in terms of like finding a niche, like finding this key idea or this key topic, or maybe a key topic that maybe it's not so crowded, but still is very difficult to enter and make impactful research, even though maybe if you don't have like a lot of resources like other top universities, or you don't have like access to huge servers, CPUs, GPUs, all of these. So how do you manage, or how can you manage that?
Maybe can I start? Yeah. So I'll try to start answering this question, and I think it's a great question because I like to think about this all the time, and I am myself in the process of doing that. But I think, in fact, you just said one niche area in which you want to be part of, which is maybe low resource computer vision. If you're interested in computer vision and maybe you don't have all the resources and all the service that other people have, that might be your own area, and that is something interesting to think about. I personally like also the idea of working in low resource environments. So that is one comment, I guess. The other one is that you can also the best, so as I was saying before, so reading broadly, it's very important. So you have to get out of, let's say, your comfort zone. So if you're reading about certain papers, and these papers, they use a lot of compute and so on, then maybe you can't think, or maybe you could, but it is harder, let's say, of thinking something that is outside of whatever you're strictly reading. So probably reading about other areas could be beneficial for yourself. And the third point that I would have is maybe having some application in mind, and that could drive also your research itself. So instead of thinking, maybe I would like to do the next neural network architecture, and maybe thinking in terms of the, let's say, models you want to develop, maybe you can think more, okay, I have this problem and I would like to solve it. I have these resources, I have some constraints. How do I solve this problem with these constraints? And then probably that will give you a good idea of a certain research area that you can do some impactful research in.
Great, thanks. Matthias or Hansen, could you want to jump in as well?
Well, yeah, I agree with what Sergio mentioned. Maybe one additional thing is to go to conferences, to actually try to find like applications or fields that are not present, because finding a niche is like trying to prove a negative. It's difficult, but still it is possible, because it's basically, you say, everyone is doing autonomous driving, transformers are now, like transformers for computer vision and all of this, but there are always things that are missing. Even talking to people, for example, you ask them, for example, what are the limitations? And maybe they tell you what the limitations are. And these are new research niche or new research areas that you can do. Like, for example, you say, we have a transformer, but it takes days of hundreds of GPUs to train. Okay, that's bad. Then, of course, try to say, okay, how can you train a transformer with much less resources? Then that's by itself a niche. And I think it's a very simple niche to always find. Like, try to make algorithms real time or implementations, approximate implementations so it's much faster to compute. And also try to attend in a conference, try to attend the workshops, because the workshops are usually like much more application oriented and like much more risk research. So they usually, if you look at the workshops, you can see the topics that maybe we will cover in the conferences in the future. So you're basically getting kind of a view of the future in general. And then from there, you can also try to find like what are the topics that maybe we will come, and then try to find your niche there. But in overall, I think if finding a niche is not that difficult. It's just like, it's the process of trying to break assumptions that people make. Like I was looking at the papers for the next neurips, like in the reviewing pool, and there were hundreds of papers about transformers. It's because everyone is working on transformers, but then transformers have the several disadvantages, and then try to work to improve these disadvantages. Then you got an niche. Then like training time, that's also a niche, and so on and so on. So instead of trying to make like what everyone does, try to make something different, and that makes your own niche.
Yeah, I can also add a few tips, and I think one of the most important things is that it has to be something that you really like and you really think about it by yourself naturally. So this might give you an insight of the broad area that you can tackle. And the other thing is, I just like to upvote the suggestion by Sergio that you should have an application, even it's a long-term application in mind, because this gives you a line of research. And I can also add that you might talk to people. You might like talk to researchers that are doing similar things that you would like to, and just propose things. Where maybe you can like spend lots of days reading papers and trying to understand what is the state of the art in your topic. But if you just address to a researcher, a good researcher that's doing that, he probably has something very insightful to tell you, and he probably has a few options that he would like to cover himself, but that it's not possible because they have so many things in parallel. So maybe that's one opportunity that you can make maybe a contact with a good researcher in that area. And also you might see things through the eyes of someone who is very experienced in the area. So that might point you to the right direction very quickly, and instead of be reading the literature for a long time. Also, reading the literature is important, but that's that type of shortcut that you can take.
Thank you. I agree completely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And your last thoughts on it. Remember our last session here. Sorry, some background noise here. Where some mentors were mentioning just have to have passion, right? on you are doing, and not only passion, but have to persevere, right? To be persistent, because at some point it will lead you to your your dream job, your dream position, graduate program, and so on. So yeah, definitely agree with you. So it seems to have some questions here from our chat, and also from Felipe and Ricardo. So let's see if Felipe could join us. Do you want to make a question, Felipe? Oh, no. Oh, yes, I don't know. Maybe Ricardo? You can try to unmute your microphone, or... Okay, so Felipe is here.
All right, hello, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfectly.
Great. So it's great to participate here. I had the honor to be interacting with Lourdes while doing the mentorship program. And just to give a quick introduction, I'm originally from Brazil. Right now I'm a postdoc researcher at the Oak Ridge National Lab in the USA. And I would like just to stress, to agree with things, for example, like Matthias said about finding your niche, especially in this direction of trying to break an assumption and go in different directions. And goes as well along the directions that Sergio said, or having this diversification of where directions you're exploring and everything. For me, one of the things that has worked nice to find my way, keep going to other institutions and have some research directions going on, is this idea of trying to, for example, instead of being focused always in that type of benchmark, always this type of architecture, you start to ask questions, well, what if I go from this data set to this other data set? What if I try these other applications? Applications with real-world data and going to different types of scenarios are one of the greatest ways that I have experienced to find the limitation of what there is out there. And right, it is something that we have been lacking in these research directions, especially in computer vision right now, that we have too much sometimes of let's get that extra 1% in this data set. And then you have many transformers with one extra skip connection or whatever, and you lose this contact with the application scenario, you lose this desire of breaking your system, which should be something that scientists should be always trying to do. And it's one of the best ways to start to see, oh, there is this gap. How can I maybe fix this? And maybe, as Sergio said, it's going to be something simple, something like, I don't know, put an extra linear regression or an extra clustering. And you can start to get into identifying like bigger gaps in your field. And, you know, I'm going to actually focus on that now, my research. And just to add to that is, I think sometimes we have some, especially when we are starting either our master's or PhD, we have that feeling that, no, I need to have a niche already and contact a potential supervisor to work on that. But the thing is that often the best thing is like the first year or maybe second year of your PhD, you're exploring the field. You're exploring the field to identify what are the gaps, and then you're going to start be defining the niche that you'll be working on later on. It will become your dissertation and will become your postdoc and so on. So I think this is something to have in mind, that do not be too much under pressure to think that, no, I need to have my niche already, otherwise I won't be able to start a PhD. It's great, as you guys said, to have an application in mind, where you want to go, what are your goals, but one thing at a time.
Yeah, that was I was mentioning, I think, in the previous question, that this is basically part of like personal growth as a researcher, that like as an undergrad or maybe as a master student, you don't have that much knowledge, in at least measurable knowledge. And it will take time for you to actually like develop your research skills, research vision and agenda. And maybe as a postdoc or even further, then you can find your niche. But yeah, mine is completely true that you should not try to find like overthink about this niche. Like maybe you can just, if you find a PhD position that it's interesting, and it has a topic that is already defined, then you can just take that and you can leave your like niche finding path for later, for when you actually have more experience. So I think that's also a very common problem for like people that want to find a PhD position, because there are many systems of doctoral research in the world. Like in the US, you apply for university and then you get accepted without a topic. Like you can find your topic later. In Europe, you need to have like at least a thesis supervisor that supports you with a position, and this usually is tied to a topic. So you don't have to do a thesis in that topic exactly, but maybe something close by. But it varies. So you should always try to like not to overthink about this. Like there should be time to have some, let's say, personal growth or research growth, and that takes a different amount of time for each person. So that's also why it's not good to compare yourself with other people. Like other people, some people may take their master thesis and extend it to a PhD, to a professorship, and then put something further. But this is very rare. I think in most cases, like the research I did for my master thesis has nothing to do with my PhD, and what I do now is always very tangentially related with my PhD. So another important point is that you don't really marry with your PhD thesis. Like it should be your thesis, but then you are free to do whatever research you want. Like that you do a PhD in a topic doesn't mean that you will like marry with this topic for the rest of your life. At least that's the way I say it. That a lot of people think it's like a marriage, like for life, but that's not true. It's a complete assumption that people make.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you all for your thoughts on it. I see that Ricardo is here as well, and maybe Ricardo want to unmute. And
hello, thank you, Pedro.
Yeah.
I was in my first months of the master's studies when the lockdown began, and I had the opportunity to get to see a lot of courses from top universities, because they are posting online at the same time that they are doing for their students. So my question is, how do you think that this will prevail after the lockdown? Do you think that as a foreign student, for example, I'm from Mexico, the academia will still put online their courses as they are producing it? Because we know that computer science is advancing very fast, and something that is novel today, maybe in 6 months, will be not so new. So what's your opinion about this? How will be the online experience continue after the lockdown? Thanks. Anyone can ask.
I guess I can start. Oh,
okay. Well, I think this was a very severe and difficult time, but a few things might improve after that. And one thing is that people will understand that many things you could do online, and teaching is such a thing that you can do online. You can learn and teach online, and that might also impact a lot of more people than before, because I've seen it had already started before the pandemic, but it increased a lot. But many universities are putting their courses online, and I don't think that it's coming back. I don't think they will change direction in the near future, because that brings a lot of visibility and for the researchers, for their institutions. And I think the benefits outweigh any possible drawbacks. So I think this will just improve. Maybe they can become like paid in future, but I don't think they will stop doing this. I think they will improve this more and more after the pandemic. That's my opinion. I also intending to share my classes, that I had to record many classes during this pandemic, and I will probably, after a certain period, and when I have time, I will like polish them up and then make them available on any online platforms. So I think many other researchers are seeing this, and they will follow this path as well, I believe.
I was going to say before that I also, as Ricardo, I benefited from this posting of classes online. I was taking a lot of online courses from different universities. But something that I would like to say on a bit of the last thing you mentioned, Ricardo, and that was that you're scared a little bit that then the latest one be published, like let's say in a year or in a couple of years. But then a lot of these classes really have the fundamentals, let's say, and the fundamentals, they don't change that much, I would say. If you want to get to the latest, you probably are better off reading papers than taking courses, because the courses always have a little bit of lag, right? So in any case, you already have, let's say, an ocean of great courses out there. And then if for any reason, although I don't believe that the trajectory is going to change, if for any reason everyone will stop posting courses, you still have a lot of courses which really have the fundamentals. And then with learning the fundamentals properly, then you can go into reading the latest research and so on.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I think in general, like a lot of people have said that like online learning will kind of replace presential or personal learning, like in person. But I think that will actually never happen, because there's a lot of stuff that you cannot really replace, like human contact. But I think in the future, it will be like a complementary or a complement to what we actually do like in person. Like maybe we can record like a set of lectures and then give it to the students so they will watch it at whatever time they want. And then we have discussions in person, something like that. Or do things like the Socratic method or this, it's called inverted learning, I think, or inverted classroom. So I think there's a lot of like theory in terms of learning that we can apply. But usually what we're constrained is more like time to actually implement this and resources. So now during the pandemic, I actually got resources, for example, to buy maybe a nice webcam, to have a proper like setup to record classes. And I hope that these investments, they stay on time. Like if we got something now, we will probably keep using it for the next 5 to 10 years. So I think we will definitely be like releasing lectures and putting courses online. And this will only, complement what we already do. But in any case, I think it's fundamental to maybe have more, let's say, programs that are in person. Like, for example, in AI in Latin America, like courses in Spanish, maybe in Portuguese as well, even in French for parts of Latin America that speak French. And maybe we can use technology for this. Like we can have a pre-recorded lecture and then have automatic translation and stuff like that. So there's also research on this area. Like one thing that people really forget is that you can do research about research. Like you can study the research process itself, like reproducibility and all of that goes into that direction. And you can do research on teaching, and that's also very important. Like we don't really know how to teach machine learning, for example. Like there's really no professional way to do it. So maybe that's also something to think for the future.
Okay, thank you very much for your insights. Thank you. Very interesting.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Thank you for the answer here. Another thing that I want to mention here, I see you have some of our mentors from the mentoring program here. So please feel free to join us here in this question marks here to join the discussion and share some of your thoughts on the question on the topic you are discussing. Please feel free to do so. Another thing that we could follow up is that we had a message here from Victor from the audience. I think it's pretty much related to what you mentioned about the importance of doing establishing connections and going abroad and so on to your for knowledge, get a better experience. So I guess in this sense, Victor is asking, in your opinion / experience, what is the best way or approach to to contact potential mentors, advisors, to start establishing connections and how to get a place right abroad. So maybe you could try to get some thoughts on it.
Yeah, I can jump into it because I've done that myself successfully a few times, and also a few people has contacted me a few times in a positive way, in a different way that wasn't so interesting for me. So I can maybe talk a little bit about it. The first thing that I'd like to see when someone gets in touch with me about research or about any topic they're interested on is that they know what is my research area, they know what I do, and they understand what are the problems we are trying to solve, and they have an idea at least on a topic, or they have a very clear point in which they would like to collaborate or to advance research. So one thing that I usually suggest to my students when they ask this question to me is, well, read his papers. If you think this researcher is doing something that is interesting to you, so you must read the research, and you must try to find a point in which you both could collaborate to improve the area. So it's important that you already have something that's clear for yourself, and that's also going to be clear for the researcher that you're contacting, because that sets the stage for you to collaborate. So if you just contact a researcher like, oh, your field is very interesting, I would like to do research in this field, and please let me talk to you someday. Okay, depending on his work schedule, it might be possible that he will reply and maybe set up a meeting with you. But if you say, look, I've read this article and I see that it has these positive points, but there is this point in which it might not work, and I would like to collaborate on that. I have this and that idea that might be testable. Or do you see anything else that could be interesting to fix this model to work in this scenario? And even it's better if you have run some tests and show that it doesn't work in some scenario, and you have some idea of what you could be done to address that. So it's interesting that you know what you're doing and you show it to the other researcher that you are actually legitimate interested in that topic and you have something to add to it.
Yeah, great. I think Sergio was about to talk about it, or no? Okay, so but any thoughts on it, Matthias or Sergio?
Yeah, I agree with what Hansen said. So I think what's important is that if you write an email, like the person that reads it should be very clear why am I getting this email, because I get hundreds of emails per day. And sometimes like some emails are just informative, like maybe we're writing a grant proposal and then maybe they want me to know that I'm doing this, or maybe they want me to write something in the proposal. So I look at the email and say, is this for me? Yes, no. If it's no, then maybe we'll read it later, or maybe I will not read it, because it's like the reality is that we don't have always the time to read all the emails or to collaborate. So of course there is some filtering that has to be applied. And so any email has to be like very personalized, and the person that reads it like should be clear why you are contacting me, and what do you need from us. Like maybe they need to do an internship, or like it should be very clear. No, it should not be ambiguous, because unfortunately I also get spam emails, like for example from several big countries, and in some cases I get like a personalized email asking me they want to join my research group in civil engineering. I'm like, but I don't even do civil engineering. So it's basically a spam email to a lot of people around the world. I said, but I mean, never do that, because of course it gets very annoying to get spam. But usually you should try to have like how does this email relate to the person, or like a relationship, like you met this person maybe at a conference, or you read his papers, read PhD thesis, and so on. And usually these emails, like they always get replied. Like I get emails from people that they said they have some questions about my PhD thesis, and yes, we can set up a meeting about that and stuff like that. So it should always be very, very personalized. It should not ever be like a very generic email, as Hansen mentioned, because yeah, as I mentioned, unfortunately we have to we don't have the full attention span that maybe we should have, and the same in terms of resources. But also try to see how do you relate to the person. Like, for example, if I get an email from a Latinx person, I will immediately have maybe more interest to read their email if I get an email that is from a non-Latinx person. So that's also something to consider, that I recognize, of course, people that are in the community. Maybe if it's only tangentially related, I will still write a reply. Maybe it will take some days, but it will come. But that goes into like, what is the relationship with the person, that how do you two relate to each other? Or maybe you will say, yeah, maybe you're more junior, maybe you need, for example, a thesis supervisor. So and it should be very clear. Like, it should also not be like begging something, because there's no need for that. Like, we're happy to share our time if it's like mutually beneficial, and even if it's not mutually beneficial, if it benefits you, that's also usually good, especially if it's inside of our Latinx community. So I think, yeah, just always try to be honest as well. Like, I got emails that are a bit deceptive, like not from the community, but I usually get emails from like, they invite me to a conference that no longer is that, not it's like this fake conference and stuff like that. So yeah, we get a lot of this every day. So that's kind of the barriers that people need to jump.
Yeah, thank you, Matthias and Hans, for the answers. Maybe, Paola, do you have any follow up on this? I guess I took too much of your time, you and Lourdes, so please.
No, I may have another question. But yeah, I agree with everything that has been said, especially on how to approach someone from the country.
I have actually a follow-up question for Matthias and Hansen, and that is, what do you think about length of emails? Because this is a difficult one, right? You're saying, okay, you want to be personalized and so on, but then what if someone sends you already the research paper that fixes your research and so on? You probably won't have the time and you won't pay attention to reading that. So maybe you can also answer a little bit on the length of at least the first contact or something like this.
Maybe it's important to see
sorry, Matthias. Sorry for interrupting you. I just have one compliment to Sergio's question is what to put in there, right? Because not only length, but what to put in that. Even more if it's the first email, how to break the ice, right?
Yeah, I think people should put a lot of care in the subject. I think that's the most important thing, because the subject is like, when you're searching for emails, that's the only thing you see, right? You don't see the full email, you only see the subject. So try to put like a fancy subject or something that will fit into my keywords or into something that maybe I search. Like for example, you put LXAI, and then when I search for LXAI, your email shows up, or some like PhD thesis or something like that. Like just by looking at the subject, I should be interested by the email. And yeah, that's also difficult to say because there are a lot of emails that try to trick you just by looking at the subject. Like they say, oh yeah, respected professor, and please send us your paper, but that's not good. So, and also like maybe in the first paragraph, like try to say who you are, why you are contacting me, and what do you want, basically. I mean, it sounds very rough, but maybe like maybe you need research guidance, or I don't know, we want to write a paper together, do internships. So maybe put this in the first few words, so it's very clear to about. Yeah, here to say subject is all you need. Yeah, maybe that's true. And then maybe like when you write a paper or when you write an introduction or an abstract, I usually try to do this inverted triangle like this, like this. So it should be maybe very general at the beginning and very specific at the end. And you should write an email the same way. Like maybe put everything you need at the beginning, and maybe all the details should come at the end. Because I usually read like the first 2 paragraphs, and if it's not interesting, maybe I will reply later, or maybe I reply immediately. But try to put as much information as possible at the beginning, including the subject.
Yeah, and Matthias said basically what I would say. I would also like to add to insist, if you really think that there is an interesting point that you can make with this researcher, insist. You can say like you wait for like a week. It's possible that the researcher, they just read your email in the cell phone and they couldn't reply because they needed a computer to do this. So and the email might just fall in the pile of emails and they just forget to answer. And then after a week, for instance, you just reply and just in case you missed the last email, and just remind the researcher that you're still interested in that subject. So it's also one thing. But that advice that Matthias gave off to be very clear and precise in the first sentence is the most important thing that I can say. If I read the first sentence and you get me there, you can have a long email that I probably will read. But if you don't get me in the first one, then I will not even go to the end of the email, because probably you lost me in the beginning, so you're not getting me again.
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess we are almost there, on our time here. Lourdes, I want to join us here and, make another follow-up here. And, thank you, Hans and Matthias, for the answer here. Pretty insightful. Thank you.
Okay, I have a last question here. What would you suggest to undergrad students to build a successful career? Anybody can go first?
Maybe I would like to say side projects. Of course, the main topics are very important. The basics is you must have good basics and understand the literature, the basic literature. But you learn a lot from side projects. So have them as soon as you can. You always should have at least one side project running. Try not to make something really huge if you can, because you might end up with just one big project at the end that you can showcase. But try to have a few and just switch from one to another, and that will help you to showcase what you can actually do when you focus on a topic. So that's my suggestion.
So what I would suggest is to always try to get out of your comfort zone. Like maybe you do your undergrad degree like in a small university in your country, but then try to contact people, for example, maybe inside your same country, but maybe bigger universities or more prestigious universities. Try to do, for example, your bachelor thesis or your master thesis in another university or in a research lab or even in a company, maybe even in Europe or in Asia or in the US, because the researchers are always in the look for what people call talent. Like if you are good at coding or coding computer science, people will definitely want to collaborate with you, because we always, as a researcher, we always have too many great ideas or too many ideas and not enough time to implement all of them. So always try to contact people, to try to break your comfort zone, and then, as Hans mentioned, try to do side projects. Maybe like your master thesis or your bachelor thesis can be like a big side project, and always try to stay motivated. It's very easy to get demotivated by the problems in Latin America, but all of this can be overcome. Maybe it will not be like a general solution for everyone, because I think that for to have an improvement, for example, in the educational system, you need to have politics and maybe government involvement, but you can still do it in a personal level. For example, try to take extra courses in your core, you're studying not computer science but something related. Try to take some computer science courses if you can. Try to always, I would say, break the mold of what people do in your university, and this will actually make you shine or highlight in your community, and this will be very easy to see from outside.
Sergio, do you want to add something?
I'm thinking about it. I'm not really sure of an advice that doesn't sound too generic, and I think that the advice that Hansen and Matthias gave are already great. Since I can't think about a non so generic one, I would say always it is very important to do the things that you like instead of following fashions. In general, following fashion could be in the short term something that could be beneficial, but then in the end you are going to be doing what you're doing, right? So it's better to make sure that you like what you're going to do instead of just following some fashion. Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone. Pedro?
Yeah, that's good. I have just one follow-up here from Felipe, who suggested here regarding this particular question, right? So for undergrad, do not underestimate, right, the importance of communicating, both written and verbally, right? So we might be in STEM fields, but still these are crucial to get your contact, visibilities, and so on. And I couldn't agree more, Felipe. So thank you for adding this to our conversation here. So we are about to finish. I would like to ask if any of our speakers here, mentors, want to add anything before our, going to the closing of the session. So please feel free to give your.
So here Victor Reina asked, is it possible to do a master's degree or PhD remotely? Well, the answer is yes. Well, maybe master's is more common. You can find online master's programs that maybe are not of this, not a diploma mill. Always, if you're trying to do one of these online degrees, make sure that it's a reputable university. But for a PhD, I think it's much more common than people think, because, for example, here in Germany and in general in Europe, it's very common that, for example, some people do a PhD while they're working. Because at least in Germany, since education is free for everyone, everyone, and the PhD level is completely tuition free. You don't need to pay anything to do a PhD. Usually what you need to do a PhD in Germany is basically having a contact with a professor and having a topics, and that he agrees to do you, to supervise you. And then basically you only do research. There's no courses, no tuition fees, nothing. Maybe only at the end when you're going to graduate. And the way is that you don't even need to register as a PhD student in university, depending on the university here in Germany. In many universities, the only requirement for you to get issued a PhD degree is that you have a thesis supervisor in that university, a professor. You have your thesis finished, the professor approves your thesis, and then 2 reviewers approve also your thesis. And then once this is all done, usually after 3 to 5 years of research, and of course this includes all the standard stuff about publishing papers, and all of that. But after all of these requirements are done, then a defense is scheduled and you get your degree. You don't even need to register at the university. So that's why a lot of people, they're working and they say, yeah, maybe the company has a contact with a professor. A lot of companies here in Germany are very research intensive. So they always have connections with professors, and you tell your boss that you want to do a PhD, okay, then you talk to the professor, then agree on a topic. maybe agree on funding with the company, and then you start. That's as easy as that. And then I know a lot of people that maybe they take 7 or 10 years for their PhD, but they're doing it as a part-time job. Like it's kind of a side project. And even here, like there are people that during World War II, like they were separated because of the war, and they finished their PhD recently after they were 90 years. So that's of course not a problem. Like no one will say anything about that. So it's the flexibility of the system in each country is very different. I think this is also possible in the Nordic countries for sure, like in Norway, Sweden, and so on, and probably in other European countries. But it depends on the educational system of every country and the university. So usually, if you want to do a PhD, for example, in Spain, you can also probably do it as an external candidate. So it's just a matter again of connections and of research affinity. Like you can also write a professor like a cold email saying that you want to do a PhD with them, and then again, all the rules that we mentioned before apply. That it should be very clear. Okay, you want to do a PhD as an external candidate. You have an interesting topic or at least an interesting idea, and then you negotiate with the professor.
Yeah, great, Matthias. Just one thing before Hans and Sergio, will goes to your closing. Danielle is, asking for your contact if you want to share your contact there in the chat. Otherwise, I will share here our email. It's mentoring@latinxai.org. So if anybody wants to, get extra information or want to, ask anything in particular, you could send us an email, and you can, just forward this to, respective people involved. So yeah, and yeah, just continuing, Hans, Sergio, or Lourdes and Paola, please. Hans, anything else to close here?
Okay. Yeah, just first I would like to thank you for the invitation. This event is really, really important for us. The first time I went to NeurIPS was because of LatinX in AI. So I'm very grateful for this initiative. It's really important. And for all the other students that are listening to us here, I suggest you to always follow these workshops. Not only this one's really good if you are Latin, but there are others that might fit as well. So go to those whenever you can, because there are many things that can help you to grow as a researcher, or even to contact industry, to have your profile viewed by others. So it's really important to go to this type of event. So I'm grateful to be part of it now. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Hans. Sergio?
Yeah, basically, I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity here, for inviting me. And I have, in fact, learned a lot from the discussion itself. And yeah, feel free, obviously, to send me an email if you have any more questions, if you maybe want to collaborate and you like my research and so on. I'm very, very happy to keep discussing on email.
Thank you, Sergio. Paola and Lourdes, please, do you have anything to add here?
Nothing to add. There's another question in the chat. One last question from Victor Reina. What are your advice for someone in his first participation attending CVPR? So I see Matthias already answered something there, but I don't know if you want to add something to that.
Yeah, well, I think in all of these large conferences, there's always like too much stuff going on at the same time. So that's also like everyone feels overwhelmed. So yeah, take it easy. Like just see, like look at the schedule, look at the events maybe that you want to attend, and just attend them. Like you don't have to attend everything. And also maybe try to look at the sponsor, like these booths, because you always get good information from them, like even to apply for a job and stuff like that. And I think also it's much more fun to actually meet in person. So also try to also take it easy in terms of a virtual conference. Networking is all you need, yeah. Maybe, probably, yes. I mean, networking always helps, always.
Okay, great. Thank you. Lourdes?
Okay. I just thank you everyone for being part of this session, and to our panelists for being here with us. It's an incredible experience, and I hope you see all of you next year. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, thank you all. Just extending the words from Paul and Lourdes. Yeah, thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to have you, and we are very thankful for you taking your time to be part here, and for the short notice invitation as well. Many things happening, so thank you for even though it was pretty short notice joining us today. So really appreciate it. Thank you for your time, and I hope to see you in our next event. Right. So thank you very much. I guess it was pretty insightful for our audience. Yeah, great value added here. So thank you. So yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.